We're just a few seconds away from the closing bell on Wall Street. And we have a rally on our hands today. The Dow still up over 500 points. That's good for a 2% gain here for the Dow this afternoon. S&P and NASDAQ also holding on to pretty substantial gains. The S&P up just over 1% and the NASDAQ up just around 0.7%. Leadership-wise in the sectors, we're continuing to see a similar story. Industrials continuing to be a leader today, and then also financials, some of those big bank names like And that wraps it up for today's trading day. Again, substantial gains. The Dow up over 500 points, S&P and NASDAQ holding on to gains. It's really interesting when you take a look at the market. You would have no idea about what's going on Main Street and the protests that we're seeing play out nationwide. We have stocks not far from their highest levels that we have seen in just a couple of months. The NASDAQ, I mentioned some of the outperformance that we are seeing in the tech names. The NASDAQ 100 is less than 1% from its record high set back in the middle of February. Sectors, industrials carrying the gains today. And then also financials, names like Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Citi, amongst the biggest gainers in the day. And I want to bring in my co-host, Miles Udland, here for the hour. And Miles, we talked about this a little bit in the 3 p.m., but this risk on trade that we're seeing, small caps and more cyclical sectors like industrials continuing to outperform.
Yeah, and I think that rotation continues to kind of back up this idea that the market is getting a bit more healthy over time, right? We've seen these growthy names, the FANG names were kind of the first movers as we moved off those March 23rd lows, but you can't have a sustained market rally unless you get some of that rotation, maybe not a permanent shift. It's not like we have to all of a sudden have value way outperforming, but you can't have entire parts of the market completely left behind. And we saw it happen a little bit last week and really over the last couple of weeks. And today, another session in which, and I keep coming back to financials just because of their, kind of where they sit in the economy, what they say about the health of the economy, their weighting in the market. XLF up 3.8% today. KBW Bank Index up about 5%. And the more financials kind of repair the damage that was done to them during the sell-off, I think the more encouraged investors are going to continue to grow with this rally.
Yeah, I certainly do agree with that. And Rick Newman, just to bring you into the conversation, it's interesting because we got some of this econ data out this morning, and take a look at the ADP report, for example. U.S. employers cutting 2.8 million private sector jobs in the month of May alone. And if it was any other time, really, I think in history, you would say, hey, that's pretty concerning. But it was actually much better than what the street was anticipating. So the market's actually taking that 2.8 million job loss as good news today.
Right. So we got a small disaster instead of a big disaster. I thought the market was looking completely past all the economic data for about the next month because we know it's all going to be terrible. But I guess less bad is a new trigger for markets. I mean, Miles, the other sector that is actually being completely left out of what's going on in the markets is small business. We're basically seeing carnage among small businesses. They are dying. But that, I guess, is not, I guess the stock market, I'm still puzzling this out. I guess the stock market does not care about small businesses. I realize they're not represented in the indexes for the most part until you get to the Russell and then only public companies. But this is going to affect bigger businesses at some point, I guess just not now.
Well, I think to that point, though, Rick, obviously, yes, the composition of the S&P 500 doesn't explicitly account for the health of small business, but implicit in what the market has done, at least in my view, is a sense that there won't be some disaster in D.C. where we don't get an additional stimulus measure passed. We have enhanced unemployment running out at the end of July. We have the first batch of PPP loans ready to kind of begin a repayment schedule. And I think a lot of these things are going to have to be addressed. But as you know, in politics time, 7 weeks is a lifetime. And there's different issues happening in D.C. right now. The market, I think, is saying we don't think Congress is going to screw this up. They haven't screwed it up yet. They've been very swift in their response. The Fed is on board. Stephen Mnuchin and Jay Powell are seeing eye to eye on this. And I think Mnuchin, pretty much has Mitch McConnell's ear, as well as anyone's going to have that. So the market doesn't think that's going to get screwed up. But we both know how quickly that could go south, but the market doesn't think, at least right now, that that's going to happen.
The market, you're right. The market basically is pricing pricing in everything going right from here on out. Also, the coronavirus has to pay attention and go away. It cannot resurface at Disney World or Disneyland this summer. The market is betting that will not happen as well. And the reopenings are going to go smoothly. I'm not buying it, but the market has been smarter than me before.
Yeah, and Rick, I think that's interesting because a lot of this is banking on the fact that we don't see a second wave. And we've talked to so many doctors. We're going to talk to another one here in just a minute. But we talked to so many doctors and they're saying that, hey, that's still a real risk out there. Yet investors keep being able to kind of push that into the back of their minds and look forward. We were talking to a couple of analysts here on the final round, and they were saying, I think it was Sam Stovall, who said that he hasn't seen, at least in his, from what he can remember, that investors are taking such a long-term view. They're looking out a couple of years at this point, and that's what's really, he said, is helping to justify this move we have seen in the market lately.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.